This guy, Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons.
Joy Behar was trying to say that I believe in dragons.
I checked it.
I checked it. When you're worried about losing your job and you're worried about podcasts taking over and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us and he won, and this is... And Joe Rogan believes in dragons.
Joe Rogan takes down The View for spreading lies. Joy Behar's Dragon Rant is just insane. Welcome back to Pop Flash, your ultimate destination for explosive celebrity scandals and media showdowns. Today, we've got a jaw-dropping battle that's shaking the internet. Joe Rogan versus The View. Trust me, this one is straight up mind-blowing. Rumors say that Joy Behar went on live TV and made a claim so ridiculous, it had everyone scratching their heads. According to her, Joe Rogan actually believes in, get this, dragons. Yeah, you heard that right, dragons. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds absolutely insane. Did Behar seriously think she could make a statement like that and just get away with it? Apparently, Behar was trying to paint Rogan as some delusional conspiracy theorist, someone so far removed from reality that he believes in mythical creatures. Like, dragons? Really? Was she hoping that people would just nod along and say, sure, that sounds totally believable? It's almost like she's trying to create some wild narrative to discredit him.
This is the most important part. This is right after she was saying, we are run by ABC News. You should trust us, not Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons.
But here's where things get crazy. Behar's entire claim was 100% false. There wasn't a shred of evidence, no facts, nothing. She came up with this entire story out of thin air and pushed it on national television, hoping no one would call her out. And yet, here we are, talking about it. Why? Because the whole thing was a complete lie. And as for Rogan, well, he was not having it. He wasn't about to sit back and let Behar's nonsense slide. Instead of staying quiet, he decided to hit back hard. Rogan went on his podcast and didn't hold back. He blasted The View for their blatant hypocrisy and called out Behar for spreading lies. And honestly, can you blame him? It wasn't just a minor exaggeration. It was a full-blown fabrication. He even laughed at the absurdity of it all, mocking the idea that he could ever believe in something so ridiculous. I mean, dragons? Are we living in a fantasy world here? It's clear that Rogan was not about to let this one go without a fight. He exposed The View for what it really is, a platform that's willing to twist the truth and spread whatever fits their narrative. According to rumors, Joe Rogan went off on how these so-called trusted journalists didn't even bother to do their homework before spreading this wild and baseless claim. They didn't stop for even a second to check the facts. They just ran with the story. And the irony? It's almost unbelievable. The same people who are always demanding the truth were now the ones guilty of spreading a completely made-up lie. I mean, how is that even possible? You'd think journalists would take the time to get things right before throwing out outrageous claims, especially when it involves someone as high-profile as Rogan. But nope, they just took Behar's word for it and went with it, all for the sake of sensationalism. They didn't care about accuracy, they cared about ratings. And in the process, they dragged Rogan's name through the mud with no shame whatsoever. It's moments like this that make people lose all faith in mainstream media. If they're willing to twist the truth about something as absurd as dragons, something that's clearly a myth, imagine what else they're willing to fabricate to get those precious views and clicks. If they can make up such a ridiculous story and get away with it, what else are they lying about? And let's be honest, this isn't even the first time The View has pulled a stunt like this. It's almost as if they live for spreading misleading narratives, stirring up drama, and riling up viewers just to keep the controversy rolling. But this time, they made a huge mistake. They chose the wrong target. Rogan isn't just any random celebrity. He has a massive, loyal audience who hangs on every word he says. And when Rogan calls something out, you best believe the whole world is listening. So, where did this bizarre dragon talk even come from? Did Rogan suddenly start hoarding medieval scrolls in his basement and secretly planning to summon fire-breathing dragons? Absolutely not. What actually happened was that Rogan had a simple conversation with a wildlife biologist about ancient myths, a totally normal intellectual discussion. They weren't talking about fantasy stories or medieval legends. Instead, they explored the fascinating theory that the legends of dragons might have come from real creatures that ancient cultures encountered. It's a theory rooted in history and biology, and it's actually pretty interesting if you stop and think about it for a second. But here's the important detail. At no point did Rogan ever claim that dragons were real or that they were out there flying around today. But The View, they didn't care one bit about the truth. Instead of taking a moment to get the facts straight, they grabbed one twisted soundbite and turned it into a full-on hit piece. The goal was clear: to make Rogan look like a complete lunatic, someone completely out of touch with reality. And according to rumors, this is far from the first time they've pulled this kind of stunt. Instead of doing their job as journalists and reporting the truth, they ran with a ridiculous, out-of-context clip just to smear Rogan's name. There was no fact-checking, no follow-up for clarification, just pure, sensationalized nonsense aimed at making headlines. But Rogan, he wasn't about to sit back and let them get away with this one. He hit back hard. According to rumors, he dragged The View through the mud for pretending to be a credible source of news while spreading blatant misinformation. He wasn't shy about it. He mocked them on his podcast and pointed out how desperate they've become. He straight up said they were panicking, and let's be honest, that's exactly what's going on. Independent voices like his are exposing the shady tactics these mainstream media outlets have been using for years, and they don't like it one bit. And let's face it, mainstream media is losing control of the narrative, and they know it. They see Rogan's massive influence, and it's driving them crazy. Why? Because he's not playing by their rules. He's not pushing their agenda. He's speaking directly to millions of people who want something real, not the polished, manipulated version of the truth they're used to. That terrifies them. They know they can't control the message anymore, and that's a huge problem for them. Now, look at how far they've fallen, scrambling for anything, even resorting to dragons to stir up some controversy. That's how desperate they are. And speaking of desperate narratives, let's switch gears for a second and talk about Kamala Harris. Rumors say that she's already quietly laying the groundwork for a 2028 presidential run. But after her disastrous performance as vice president, does she even stand a chance? Let's be real here. If her time as VP is any indication, things aren't looking too great for her. Reports are saying that Kamala Harris has poured millions of dollars into fixing her public image, but let's face it, nothing seems to be working. The American public hasn't forgotten her disastrous 2020 presidential run, and now even members of her own party are starting to lose faith in her ability to lead. According to whispers in political circles, some insiders are already calling her unelectable. Ouch. That's gotta hurt, right? But is Kamala Harris backing down in the face of all this? Absolutely not. According to rumors, Democratic strategists are working around the clock, desperately trying to spin her past failures into some kind of success story. They're doing everything they can to reframe her record and make it seem like she's been a massive success. But here's the thing, numbers don't lie. Poll after poll keeps showing the same thing. The American people just aren't buying it. No matter how many times they try to spin the narrative, the truth is right there in front of them. So what's next for Kamala Harris? Well, some sources are suggesting that she might be secretly considering a run for governor of California instead of going for the presidency again. But hold up, if that's true, doesn't that feel like a huge step down for someone who was literally the vice president of the United States? I mean, think about it. If she had the kind of influence she claims to have, wouldn't she be aiming for something bigger? Something more substantial? Running for governor of California sounds like a massive shift in ambition, and not exactly the kind of move someone in her position would make if they had their sights set on the top job. At the end of the day, one thing is crystal clear. Whether it's The View spreading blatant misinformation or Kamala Harris trying to rewrite her history, the desperation is hard to ignore. Both are doing whatever they can to hold on to power and credibility, but it's obvious that the clock is ticking. The pressure is mounting and the cracks are starting to show. Let's be honest, it's only going to get worse from here. So, how long can they keep up this charade? So, what do you think? Is The View deliberately misleading people for clicks and ratings? And does Kamala Harris really stand a chance in the future? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Pop for even more jaw-dropping exclusive updates. See you next time.